Hi all, NCERT Class 8 History Chapter The Making of the National Movement 1870s to 1947 Balance. The Swadeshi movement sought to oppose British rule and encourage the idea of self-help, Swadeshi enterprise, national education and the use of Indian languages. To fight for Swaraj, the radical advocated mass mobilization and boycotted of British institutions and goods. Some individuals also began to suggest that revolutionary violence would be necessary to overthrow British rule. So, to fight for Swaraj, the radical advocated mass mobilization. Some individuals also began to suggest that revolutionary violence would be necessary to overthrow British rule. The opening decades of the 20th century were marked by the other developments as well. A group of Muslim landowners and Nawabs formed the All India Muslim League at Dhaka in 1906. A group of Muslims, landowners and Nawabs formed the All India Muslim League at Dhaka 1906 Dhaka. The League supported the partition of Bengal. It desired separate electors for Muslim, a demand considered by the government in 1909. Some seats in the council were reserved for Muslims. Who would be elected by Muslim voters. This tempted politicians to gather a following by distributing favor to their own religious groups. Meanwhile, the Congress built in 1907. The moderates were opposed to the use of boycott. They were felt that it involved the use of force. After the split, the Congress came to the dominant by the moderates with Tilak. The moderates is dominated by Bal Gangadhar Tilak. Bal Gangadhar Tilak's followers functioning from outside. The two groups reunited in December 1915. The Congress reunited in December 1915. The next year, the Congress and the Muslim League signed to historic Lucknow Pact and decided to work together for representative government in country. The next year, the Muslim League and the Congress signed the historic Lucknow Pact and decided to work together. The growth of mass nationalism. After 1919, the struggle against British rule gradually became a mass movement involving peasants, tribals, students, and women in large number, and occasionally factory workers as well. Certain business groups too began to actively support the Congress in the 1920s. So after 1919, the struggle against British rule gradually became a mass movement, and in 1920s, the business groups also began to actively support the Congress. The First World War altered the economic and political situation of India. It led to a huge rise in the defense expenditure of the Indian government. The First World War altered the economic and political situation of India. It led to a huge rise in the defense expenditure of Government of India. The government in turn increased taxes on individuals' incomes and business profits, increased military expenditure and demand for war supplies due to a sharp rise in prices, which created great difficulties for the common people. But business groups reaped fabulous profits from the war. The war created a demand for industrial goods like jute bags, cloth, rails, and caused a decline of imports from other countries into India. So, Indian industries expanded during the war, and Indian business groups began to demand greater opportunity and development. The war also led the British to expand their army. A large number of soldiers were sent to serve abroad. Many returned after the war with an understanding of the ways in which imperialist powers were exploiting the people of Asia and Africa, and with a desire to oppose colonial rule in India. Furthermore, in 1970 there was a revolt in Russia. News about peasants and workers' struggles and ideas of socialism circulated widely, inspiring Indian nationalists. The advent of Mahatma Gandhi. It is in these circumstances that Mahatma Gandhi emerged as a mass leader. As you know, Gandhiji, aged 46, arrived in India in 1950 from South Africa, having led Indians in the country in non-violent marches against racist restrictions. He was already a respected leader, known internationally. His South African campaigns has brought him in contact with various types of Indians: Hindus, Muslims, Parsis, and Christians, Gujaratis, Tamils, and North Indians, and upper caste merchants, lawyers, and workers. Mahatma Gandhi spent his first year in India traveling throughout the country, understanding the people, their needs, and their overall situation. His earliest interventions were in local movement in Champaran, Khetha, and Ahmedabad, where he came into contact with Rajendra Prasad and Vallabhbhai Patel. In Ahmedabad, he led a successful mill workers' strike in 1980. Mill workers' strike 1980. The Rowlatt Satyagraha. In 1990, Gandhiji gave a call for Satyagraha against the Rowlatt Act that has just passed by the British. The Act curbed fundamental rights such as freedom of expression and strengthened police powers. Mahatma Gandhi and Muhammad Ali Jinnah and others felt that the government had no right to restrict people's basic freedom. They criticized that as devilish and tyrannical. Gandhiji asked the Indian people to observe 6 April 1919 as a day of a non-violence opposition to this act. The Rowlatt Satyagraha turned to be the first all-Indian struggle against the British government. The Rowlatt Satyagraha turned out to be the first all-Indian struggle against the British government. In April 1990, there was a number of demonstratives and hartals in the country, and the government used burner measures to suppress them. The Jallianwala Bagh, inflicted by General Dyer in Amritsar on Baisakhi Day 13 April, were a part of this repression. On learning about the massacre, Rabindranath Tagore renounced his knighthood. During the Rowlatt Satyagraha, the partisans tried to ensure that Hindus and Muslims were united in the fight against British rule. This was also the call of Mahatma Gandhi, who always saw India as a land of all the people who lived in the country: Hindus, Muslims, and those of all other religions. He was keen that Hindus and Muslims support each other in any just cause. Khilafat agitation and the non-cooperation movement. The Khilafat issue was one such cause. In 1920, the British imposed a harsh treaty on the Turkish Sultan or Khalifa. People were furious about this, as they had been about the Jallianwala Bagh massacre. Also, Indian Muslims were keen that the Khalifa be allowed to retain control over Muslim scared places in the Ottoman Empire. The leaders of the Khilafat agitation, Muhammad Ali and Shaukat Ali, now wished to initiate a full-fledged non-cooperative movement. Gandhiji supported their call and urged the Congress to campaign against Punjab wrongs. Punjab wrong means Jallianwala Bagh massacre. The non-cooperative movement gained momentum through 1921 to 22. Thousands of students left government-controlled schools and colleges. Many lawyers such as Motilal Nehru, C. R. Das, C. Rajagopalachari, and Asaf Ali gave up their practices. British titles were surrendered and legislatures boycotted. People lit public bonfires of foreign cloth. The import of foreign cloth fell drastically between 1920 and 1922. People's initiatives. In Kheda, Gujarat, Patidar Present organized non-violent campaigns against the high land revenue demand of the British. In coastal Andhra and the inferior Tamil Nadu, liquor shops were picketed. In the Gandoor district of Andhra Pradesh, tribals and poor peasants staged a number of forest satyagrahas. In Sindh, now in Pakistan, Muslim traders and peasants were very enthusiastic about the Caliphate's cell. In Bengal too, the Caliphate Non-Cooperative Alliance gave enormous communal unit and strength to the national movement. In Punjab, the Akhali agitation of the Sikhs sought to remove corrupt Mahans, supported by the British, from their graduates. In Assam, tea garden laborers shouted Gandhiji Maharaj Ki Jai and demanded a big increase in their wages. So the people also take initiative for the national movement. Thank you.